This episode of the Media Leader podcast was edited by our production partner Trisonic, the audio advertising specialists with over 25 years experience. For more, visit trisonic.co.uk.
Great work and sort of the bedrock that great work sort of comes from hasn't changed. It's still built on trust, creativity, and having sort of strong relationships and partnerships, even at a time when there's lots of headwind and lots of things are evolving.
Welcome to the Media Leader podcast. I'm Jack Benjamin. Every year, the Media Leader, alongside our events business, Ad Wanted Events, hosts the Future of Brands, a conference here in London dedicated to showcasing the power media and advertising can hold for brands. This year, the conference is also being combined with a sister event, the Future of Audio and Entertainment, which is all about how innovations in audio, as well as short-form video and gaming, are driving effectiveness for advertisers. One of the biggest British brands speaking at the event is Specsavers, and I was glad to sit down with their head of media, connections planning, and insights, Ian Maybank, ahead of the conference this week to discuss how Specsavers has built a strong brand through media investment. We spoke about how to bring creative and media together, what an ideal channel mix looks like in 2025, and how agency-client relationships have changed over time. We'll have reporting from the events on the Media Leader website coming soon, but in the meantime, I hope you enjoy this conversation. Ian Maybank, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks very much for having me, Jack. Delighted to be here.
Well, it's been a really long time since we've had a brand's perspective here on the podcast, so it's really great to have you on. You've been at Specsavers for about 3 years now, and before that spent a number of years at PepsiCo. I'm always curious to know what attracted our guests to the media industry, but for you, I'm especially interested in what appealed to you about working on the buy side and working for the brands.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, if I start at the beginning maybe and just give you a little potted history of my career and where it started and sort of where it sort of led to now, really, we'll probably give you a sort of a good sense of direction of travel. But I began my career in advertising with a work placement at Saatchi & Saatchi when I was at university. And then upon sort of graduating, I spent sort of about 13 years in creative agencies at the start of my career. So I worked at a company called Spirit, which was a startup when I first left uni, and then went on to Rainey Kelly Campbell Rolfe, working on brands like The Times, Lloyd's TSB, Home Office, Jaguar. And it was a great agency to work at. It's at the top of its game, winning sort of marketing's agency of the year and a massive springboard for the careers of a lot of people in the industry. And then took a bit of time out, had a sabbatical, went traveling with my wife, or my now wife. And on returning, I joined Grey London, which was sort of on a bit of a mission to sort of transform itself from being sort of, if you like, being known as Grey by name, Grey by nature, to one of the sort of hottest agencies in London. And that was a great ride. I mean, there was like, about 200 people when I joined. When I left, it was 600 people. We tripled our revenues, launched complementary businesses, won campaign agency of the year, won a load of new business. So that was fantastic. And then I guess sort of fast forward to sort of 2015, and this is where the media part sort of starts to kick in maybe a little bit more. I was getting sort of itchy feet a bit. I wanted a new challenge. I'd been increasingly sort of leading cross-functional teams across WPP from within Grey, comprising of sort of advertising, media, PR, design, sort of agency skills from across the group. And I sort of decided that maybe sort of further upskilling myself in the world of media was going to add sort of complementary skills to my CV and to my sort of skill set overall. So I joined Dentsu Aegis to look after Kellogg's across Europe, working across sort of Carrot, Isobar and iProspect. I learned a ton about how sort of large FMCG works and operates, and then sort of built at the same time my media knowledge further from what I had already. And then sort of PepsiCo approached me, and they were sort of a lady called Becky Taylor. She was setting up a sort of centre of excellence for digital, looking at sort of marketing and sort of sales across the European business and how to sort of evolve the sort of the business model and digitize it effectively. So I joined that team, spent about 4 years in the snacks team, predominantly working on sort of Walkers and Lays across Europe. Evolved the model, really, the marketing model, from one that was sort of focused predominantly on TV and shopper as the sort of core sort of channels, into one that was taking at least, 30% of the activity on digital. and then sort of, help relaunch and turn around Walker's Crisps in the UK, did some amazing work with sort of Spice Girls and Mariah Carey. But I think what became quite clear with that role quite quickly was the digital transformation part you couldn't really talk about without looking at the full marketing mix and the full media mix. So that role evolved probably about a year and a half, 2 years into sort of a total media and connections role. And then sort of the last couple of years in the business, I spent working on the sort of name above the door, so on Pepsi and also on 7-Up and Rockstar in the European beverages business, where we got to take Pepsi Max to being sort of biggest no sugar cola in the UK. So some great business, like loads learned and sort of loads of opportunity there. And then sort of to where we are now, really, into today, which is sort of Specsavers came along. So Nicola Warder, who runs our in-house creative team, I'd worked with her previously at Grey, and she introduced me to a chap called Chris Carter here, who sort of gave me the opportunity to join the business. It was really a no-brainer, such a strong brand with a sort of great pedigree of doing really good standout work. And an amazing sort of culture as well that's also doing good for millions of people with their sight and hearing every day and every year. So here I am sort of 3 years in and absolutely loving it.
Awesome. I mean, it is such a strong brand, and that's part of the reason why you'll be speaking at our Future of Brands event this week. By the time this episode comes out, it'll be this week.
That's right.
And, Specsavers has been acclaimed for media and creative excellence a lot in recent years. You've been sort of the beneficiary of a number of awards, including the Canline Grand Prix for Radio last year. I think that was the first time a UK brand had won the Radio Grand Prix.
That's right.
From your perspective, what's been responsible for the sustained success for the brand's marketing efforts?
Consistency, I think. We're lucky that we've got a sort of long-standing brand platform. It should have gone to Specsavers. That's, it's enabled us to sort of build the brand and grow the business both at the same time. I think humour plays a key part in that. I think we've become synonymous with humour, and that's a great lever us really to pique our sort of audience's interests, and that's both in the creative execution, but also in the media in terms of sort of how we bring that to life. And I think having that consistent brand platform and being famous for humour as well has allowed us to play with our own brand codes a bit as well in some of our advertising. So I'm sure you're familiar with it. Our I Don't Go to Specsavers campaign for our home visits business, which won the IPA Effectiveness Gold last year. And also, I think now we've just embarked on our latest sort of audiology campaign, where again, we're playing with those sort of codes that we've built up over many years. And we've launched now Specs and Hearing Savers, which is really bringing to light how we're not just an opticians, we're also an audiologist business as well. And Specs and Hearing Savers is the sort of the latest sort of iteration of that.
And that was part of that Misheard campaign, which won the Grand Prix last year, right?
No, so Specs and Hearing Savers is the sort of the next stage of it, but all connected, if you like. Yeah, that
gotcha.
The Rick Ashley stuff is part of what we call the national conversation, and there's more of that to come later this year, where we're trying to get. It takes a long time for people to sort of recognise they need to come in and maybe have a hearing test. From sort of recognizing the need to actually coming into the one of our stores and seeing us can take up to 10 years. So what we're trying to do at the moment through things like Rick is to get the much more onto a national conversation and much more reducing stigma and getting people to come in and see us much earlier, so we can then treat any challenges with their hearing that they've got.
Yeah, something that stands out about that type of advertising is that you're talking about hopefully getting people the same message over a very long period of time, because it takes people a very long time to maybe book an appointment or even realize that they have a hearing issue or a sight issue. So when it comes to media planning, does that impact sort of the types of advertising that you're looking to buy against?
That's a really good question. I think we're always looking for longevity in terms of what we're doing. So we're not just, we're thinking about the long term. We're lucky to be in a business that is family owned, is not reporting to the stock market every quarter in terms of earnings. And we play the long game, I think, ultimately. So that then probably plays into maybe some of the media choices we're making, maybe more so than that we're trying to bring that sort of time that for people to come in around hearing loss down. So I wouldn't say that necessarily plays into our media choices, but I think what does play into our media choices maybe a little bit is the fact that we can think about how we're going to grow the brand over the long term, not just a quarter.
Right. Something that's stood out to me about Specsavers is the sort of creative use of media formats ever since I've been reporting on the industry, which has been now over 3 years. Things like unique out-of-home formats, sideways posters, or obviously the audio format with Rick Astley, getting him to sing the wrong lyrics to Never Gonna Give You Up. I'm curious, in what ways are you able to bring media and creative together so effectively? And are there still hurdles that you constantly work through in trying to do that?
I think, that in terms of bringing media and creative together, it's one of our sort of strengths, if you like. I think we're lucky in that we have an in-house agency that does a lot of our creative, but then also we do have other external creative partners, but we have a relatively small roster of agencies that we work with, whether they're internal or external partners. And I think the sort of back to the sort of longevity piece. I think we're able to sort of think about the long term and think about how we are planning media over the long term, and sort of then get the right people in the room and sort of look for these opportunities. And I think it only works because we've got that consistency around sort of the brand idea, if you like. So we really understand what Should Have Gone to Specsavers is about, and we also know how we can use humour to help sort of pique interest and tackle what can be quite challenging issues, but do it in the right way. So I think that then lends itself to bringing creative and media much closer together.
Some of the most interesting activations that I pointed to are, for lack of a better term, sort of stunty. It's really interesting, captures the attention. You might get some earned media value from it. But how do you find the right balance between going big on some of the, I can't imagine it was cheap to get Rick Astley to sing a song, right? Versus booking a more standard campaign. How do you find that right balance?
What we try and do is, where we've got the sort of we can only do the sort of, if you like, more stunty things through having a long-standing brand platform, and that enables us then to sort of do things that are maybe a sort of a little bit more risky, maybe, if you like, and stand out in the sort of short term. But that is underpinned by a solid base of advertising. Now, if you look at our sort of marketing calendar for the year, we'll be on air for the 4th time with Should Have Gone to Specsavers Airport. We'll have our home visits business on air again with I Don't Go to Specsavers for the 6th time. So that then underpins some of the sort of maybe more stunty things that we do. So we have a broad mix. I don't think we'd ever just rely on having stunts as being part of our sort of main tool for activating our audiences. And then we also have, alongside our sort of, if you like, firework campaigns, we also have activity that is always on in terms of performance marketing that is driving bookings, driving people through the door to book appointments, but also talks to our sort of value that we offer in the market as well. So making sure that we, people are aware that we, offer a great service at a great price as well.
Mm. You've talked a lot about the sort of benefits of working for a brand like Specsavers when it comes to the creative aspect and also the media planning aspect and those sort of fusing together. What would your advice be to other brands, employees, depending on, obviously every brand's a little bit different, but in general, in terms of trying to bring those two things close together? Because it does seem like it's really a pain point, especially at our conferences. It's constantly brought up as, why can't we get creative and media talking more?
Yeah, I think that the key thing is people. All ultimately comes down to people, I think, and that is probably one of the key things that you've got to get right. I've got examples from my career, so I'll give you one. When I worked at Rainey Kelly, we used to work coincidentally actually with our Specsavers media agency, Manning Gottlieb. We used to work with them on a number of different clients, so the Home Office, Virgin Atlantic, Virgin Trains. One agency owned by Omnicom, the other one owned by WPP. We had a brilliant relationship, and it was all down to the right people setting the right ambitions and creating the right conditions for the work, and that goes to not just the agency teams but also the clients, I think, that we work with there as well, setting those conditions. So I think people is one key thing. I think another key thing is time. If you've got lots of different agency groups, you've probably also got teams internally you need to bring into some of the creative process as well, whether that's a web team, a CRM team. I think time can be another major factor as well, and I don't think enough clients, brands maybe allow enough time. They want a Cannes award winning, sales driving, new customer growth providing idea. Oh, and by the way, you've got 3 days to do it, and by the way, you need to involve other agencies. And I think sometimes allowing a bit more time to get it right and allowing everyone to collaborate and work together on it gets better results. But I think that then what that means is that internally the sort of the brand teams, the marketing teams have probably got to push back on some stakeholders and say, look, you're just going to have to wait a little bit longer. I think that we're lucky at Specsavers in having a sort of a brilliant sort of in-house team and a brilliant sort of agency group that work together. And whilst we're always looking for the new idea, we want consistency as well. And by being consistent and sort of utilizing assets over time, what that also does for us, I think, is while we're creating new work, it gives us a bit more time as well, because we're not on a deadline to get a new campaign out the door. We'll run assets that we've already got in the mix, if that makes sense.
You mentioned the variety of agencies that you might work with. Obviously, MGOMD is the media agency you work with. I'm curious, especially given that you've worked both on the agency side and also now on the brand side, how you've seen the agency-client relationship change over the course of your career?
Ultimately, I think a lot of it still remains the same, actually. I think I'm probably more interested in what remains the same within agency-client relationships. And I think, the key thing is people. And, people are key to making that work. And I think the other bits that still ring true, honesty and trust between the teams that are working together. You're bringing lots of different people in with different perspectives and different skill sets. You're paying external agencies for their time to do that, so it's costing the business a lot of money. So I think making sure that you've got sort of a really solid foundation of a relationship where you can have robust conversations, be honest and open with each other, not leave the room with problems left in the room. You need to wear those at the time. I think that's still key. I think, having a big ambition for the work as well. So making sure that you set yourself the goal in terms of the work you want to create and make sure you're super clear with it. We're really clear with our agencies about about the type of work that we want to make, and set that goal. And then I think, the other thing I think is probably making sure the work and the output from the relationship or relationships is effective. So making sure you're measuring it in the right way, making sure that everyone's clear on the objectives up front, and that you're getting then the ROI back, you're getting the performance of the campaign, etc. So I think those fundamentals from when I started in agencies all the way through now to being a client remain exactly the same.
And how would you describe the relationship with MGOMD as the current media agency? I mean, what makes that partnership tick in particular for you guys?
I think a number of different things. I think one is longevity. Again, back to the point I was making about, we're not in the business of quarters here, right? As a privately owned business, we are playing the infinite game, if you like. And I think, we've been working with OMD Ireland and MGOMD now for 13 years. We renewed the contract again about 2 years ago. And I think the longevity really helps. The agencies have got a broad and in-depth knowledge of our business, but they also hold a broad range of relationships within our business, which is really important. So I think that really helps us. I don't know whether you saw the IPA and System 1 research into sort of creative consistency and campaign consistency, but it said brands that have longer term agency relationships also create better work and produce better work. And we definitely see that playing out within our the work that we produce across all of our sort of partner agencies, but specifically in what we're talking about here with MG and with OMD Ireland. So I think that's one key thing. I think another key part of it is honesty and trust, as I was talking about before. I think we have a very sort of open and honest relationship that we, will address problems, we'll address challenges and face them head on. And I think the final part is, as I said before, we're really clear on the sort of work we want to make, and that we want to have work that not only creatively is great, but also is effective and has an impact on our business and on our bottom line, but also, on our customers, and making sure that they understand our business and what we can bring to them.
There's been a couple reports over the past 2-3 years from the likes of MediaSense, sort of looking at the existing tensions between agencies and their clients. And I'm curious what tensions you see, not necessarily with you and your agency. It sounds like you have a good long-standing relationship, but between agencies and brands more generally. There's been issues around remuneration. It sounds like most brands out there are looking for a slightly different model of output from their agency. And I'm sort of curious what you make of that.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think some of that can distract, from the bigger picture of ultimately, what are you there to do? We're there to create campaigns and work that, serves our customers and serves the business. So I think some of that can be a bit of a sort of, can sidetrack you a little bit. I think that's the beauty of us having an in-house creative agency, is that there is not that tension. Then, sometimes with external agencies, not necessarily with ours, but sometimes they can be focused on new business and existing clients get neglected a bit. We don't have that, certainly with our sort of, in-house creative. So that can be a challenge. I also think, remuneration can be a bit of a challenge. I think clients obviously want more for less from their agencies, and it's not getting cheaper to employ people, regardless of what sector you're in, whether you're in marketing or whether you're in another sector. So I think that the sort of remuneration and what clients expect for the money that they're paying is another potential challenge that you sort of see play out in the market. I think the other thing is, I think clients with agencies and client relationships, clients know what they want from the agencies, right? And why they're bringing them in, and why they're hiring that agency to do that job versus this agency over there. And I'm not sure clients are always necessarily clear of what agencies they require to deliver the jobs that they've got to work on. And therefore, that I think can create a little bit of tension sometimes if they're not clear why they've got certain agencies doing certain roles. And I think also in this day and age, you can see some overlap as well. If you've got lots of different agencies working, I think that becomes quite hard for clients, but also for those agencies you're working with to navigate as they're producing work and campaigns.
You've mentioned in-housing a couple of times. I'm curious at what point you think brands, if you were working for generic other brand, at what point you would consider in-housing, and does AI make that any easier potentially for brands to start doing, whether it's creative or media?
Does AI make it? Okay, so I think when would you start to consider in-housing? I think with in-housing overall, I think you've got to be thinking about why you're doing it, what reasons you're doing it for. I think I've had the privilege now to sort of work with, I guess, at PepsiCo we had Sips and Bites, and obviously we've got the creative hub within Specsavers. The privilege now of working with two in-house setups, and two that seem to be, from what I've seen, but also then from industry awards, accolades, articles, getting it right. And I think brands need to consider why they're get into in-housing, but then also what elements of their marketing mix do they want to in-house, because you probably don't want to in-house everything. We've purposely not in-housed our media, for example, here at Specsavers. We've very much made the focus on creative, and we did it also way before it was maybe sort of slightly on trend to have in-housing as a thing. We've had an in-house agency for decades now, and it was sort of built out of the need to evolve the marketing, and that's really where it came from. So I think about what do you want to in-house, and why you're doing it. Is it for cost-saving purposes? Is it because you want better creative? Is it because you're looking for a much more sort of streamlined way of working? You need to really work all of that out before you just go in-housing the solution. And I think also, for brands as well, I think it's some of things like where you're located, for example, can play a big difference. Are you going to have to set up a separate hub in a major city where talent is, like London or Manchester, in order to make your in-house work? Do you also have the volume of work going through to justify having a team of permanent colleagues, working for you as well? So I think that needs to all be thought through before, let's say, jumping to in-house, because sometimes going to an external agency, either for expertise or for sort of having more flexibility, maybe, is the right solution.
And do you think AI would make any of that decision making easier in terms of whether you're going to in-house?
I think it might do, and I think it's probably too early to call at the moment, because I think a lot of the sort of technology is still quite nascent and being developed. But I think it could do. I think what it certainly will do. I think what AI will certainly do for agency client relationships is clients probably won't want to pay for things that they can produce themselves, right, in terms of at speed. So that there might be things that AI sort of takes over the production of, and clients sort of take that on. And then I think, maybe pricing models will have to change for agencies. So clients won't pay that premium rate for things they can generate in seconds. They will very much be, looking, probably they should be thinking more about sort of outcomes, really, and then sort of maybe remunerating on that basis.
So I mean, it's really interesting, because if I'm an agency hearing that, I might feel a little concerned. We need to innovate in a way that, okay, it sounds like we're going to bring AI. Most agencies are working with AI in some form, or at least are open to it. But in doing so, is it a bit of a race to the bottom in terms of, well, we want to offer more for less, to the point that that's exactly what brands want. So it's great for folks like yourself. But I imagine that could be concerning for the agencies.
I think it could be. I think that agencies need to double down on what they bring in terms of creativity, innovation, thought leadership, strategy. I think they need to be making sure that those things, the human element, if you like, that they bring, and that sort of expertise is really coming to the fore. So therefore they stand head and shoulders above AI. I think, ultimately, I think the strongest client agency partnerships will stay human. I think they will ask the right questions of each other, the agencies and the clients. And I think agencies have got a role to help their clients navigate the shift to AI as well. I think there's a huge role they can play there as well, because there are lots of different ways you can go with it. And I think that agencies should be thinking about how they provide clarity in this space to their clients. And, one of the benefits, I guess, of having external agencies is they're working with lots of different businesses in different sectors, often in lots of different geographies as well. So they can bring knowledge and understanding of their other clients, their other geographies, and really sort of, help bring that together for their clients, really. So, I remain positive that, ultimately, we're a people business. And I think, as we were talking about just a moment ago, fundamentally, I think the sort of great work and sort of the bedrock that great work sort of comes from hasn't changed. It's still built on trust, creativity, and having sort of strong relationships and partnerships, even at a time when there's lots of headwind and lots of things are evolving.
I'm curious how you view the current landscape for media investment when it comes to the channel mix. What does an ideal channel mix look like for you in 2025? Obviously, when working with MGOMD to help plan.
It's broad, I think. What we've got to balance is what we've always done with the new. So I think that's a key part of it. But the media mix overall we increasingly talk about having an AV strategy, not a TV strategy. So what I mean by that is we invest into Netflix, we invest into Disney Plus, Amazon, obviously all the BVOD from all the major broadcasters in the UK and Ireland, as well as linear TV. That's still a huge part of our investment and our plans, and sort of cinema and YouTube. So that makes up our sort of AV part of our plan, if you like. We also audio increasingly plays more of a role as well with, we obviously have the traditional elements of audio, but we invest into podcasts, we invest into streaming services like Spotify as well. Well, out of home, we still invest in print. We're still investing into print, both the digital version of print and also, the printed paper as well. We've not stopped there. We serve a broad range of customers, really, all the way through from sort of children all the way through to older members of the community, so making sure that we've got all those touch points in there. So yeah, press is very much a key part, through to social. We're increasingly increasing our social investment year on year, and obviously search and all of the sort of search elements as well. So we have a fairly broad media mix. We try and make sure all the time that we are sufficiently investing, though, in those platforms. What we never want to do is spread our investments too thinly within activity that we're doing, so we're not getting sufficient levels of investments.
Do you think there's any area that is overinvested or underinvested? I mean, it sounds like the linchpin for a lot of the plan is actually there's a lot of traditional media that you mentioned there, and then obviously, of course, bringing in the platforms or search and more of the digital platforms as well. So I'm curious, with such a broad investment, if you viewed the market more generally as maybe we should be investing more in one place than another, or is there any correction that's happened over the past couple of years in terms of investment?
Yeah, for us, no. I think we're big advocates of the long and short of it. So I'm always looking to sort of balance our spend in terms of that sort of long-term brand building and short-term sales activation. So that is a big part of how we're sort of planning our investment and thinking about it. We look to I had the KPI set that we're sort of looking at, sort of that 60-40 split. We'll adjust the balance and the sort of EQ on that depending on sort of trading conditions and sort of what the market is looking like for us. But that's a big focus for us. Are there any channels sort of underinvested or overinvested? I think maybe not channels or as such, but I do think more broadly outside of this organization, I think within marketing we overinvest probably in short-term sales driving activity, but underinvest in that sort of long-term brand building, on the wrong assumption that the sort of the brand building piece doesn't deliver in the short term, when actually, certainly for us, it does both the long and the short. So that probably to me suggests that some brands are sort of over investing maybe in digital that's focused on short-term outcomes, driving clicks, that sort of things, but under investing in areas maybe like AV, cinema, out of home that can lead to sort of that longer term brand building.
All right, I'm about to ask a forward-looking question to end. So I know there's lots of uncertainty at the moment. Macroeconomic conditions change, it sounds like, every day. And all that considered, what do you expect to change about the way that we buy and sell media broadly within the industry over the next 5 years, let's say?
Again, I'm sort of more interested in what will remain the same in some ways. I think what will change is we're going to see more consolidation within the market. So whether TV is bought on a more consolidated basis, you could see that happening potentially, certainly within markets, and with players like Amazon and Netflix coming into the more the broadcasters, probably in a similar way to print has done with the likes of Ozone coming. You could see the sales houses coming together. We're obviously seeing consolidation in the world of audio and out of home, I think, a little bit with Bauer coming together with Clear Channel, and obviously we've got Global offering that audio and out of home dimension as well. So I think consolidation will be happening. I think there'll be increasing drive to sort of more AI driven solutions, as we see with the likes of Meta through things like looking for audiences, that sort of automated placement, that type of thing. So I see more of that coming through, and not just in the digital space. You could see that happening with out of home, for example, as the network becomes more digitized. That would also become more driven by sort of AI trading solutions as well. So those are some of the things that I think will sort of change the media buying landscape over the coming years.
Right. Well, that's all the time we have. So, Ian, I'll let you go, but I'll be seeing you very shortly at the Future of Brands, where we're going to unpack lots more of these topics in more detail. But I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today.
Jack, it's been great to chat to you. Thank you so much for having me, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Media Leader podcast. Our executive producer is me, Jack Benjamin. Special thanks to our production partner, TriSonic. You can find all our episodes on the podcast platform of your choice or on our website at uk.themedialeader.com. But do please remember to subscribe to be notified of our next episode. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at The Media Leader to receive daily coverage of all the biggest news stories in media and advertising. From all of us at The Media Leader, I'm Jack Benjamin. See you next time.